Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. The aim of our webinar today is to introduce to you the call for experts that was recently launched by Small Business Standards. The call aims at selecting experts to represent SMEs in standardization work, both at European and at international level. So my name is Maitane Olavarria. I am the director of Small Business Standards, and together with Alain Deschamps, a standardization policy officer, we will be the speakers of this webinar today. So let me start the presentation by introducing Small Business Standards, SBS, our role and what we do, so that you can better understand the context of this call for experts. As we know, SMEs are a key part of the European economy. SMEs and crafts represent up to 99.8% of all businesses in the EU, and they account for 2/3 of all jobs. SMEs, therefore, are potentially the greatest users of standards. It is important also to highlight that there are around 1,500 standards, technical specifications, and reports published every year by the European standards organizations. It is therefore important that SMEs participate in discussing, writing, and updating standards so that their needs are taken into account and that they are able to fully benefit from standards. Yet, as we know, reality shows us that the participation of SMEs in the standardization process is low compared with their importance within the economy. This is one of the main reasons for the establishment of Small Business Standards, SBS. One of the main roles of SBS is precisely to give SMEs in Europe a strong voice to ensure their interests and needs are duly considered in the standardization process. SMEs are underrepresented in standardization for many reasons, but often the first challenge is the lack of awareness about the standards, and the second one is the knowledge about the standardization system and the resources to get actively involved. Finally, it is important also to mention that another important reason for the establishment of SBS was the adoption in 2012 of the EU Regulation 1025/2012 on European standardization. One of the objectives of this regulation is to make the European standardization system as inclusive, transparent, and open as possible by ensuring that stakeholders, including SMEs and societal stakeholders as well, are better represented in the standardization process. In this slide, you can see the members of Small Business Standards. As you can see, these include European national associations representing crafts and SMEs. The SBS membership includes both horizontal organizations representing SME interests in general, but also sector-specific SME organizations representing their interest in a specific sector. So just to recap, the three main goals of Small Business Standards are therefore to represent the interest of SMEs in the standardization process, both at European and, since we also see that the importance of international standardization is increasing at the international level. To raise awareness of SMEs about the importance and benefits of standards, and finally, to motivate them to engage in the standardization process. So how do we do this? SBS carries out many activities, but there are a couple of activities that I think are important to mention in the context of the calls. So from the technical side, one of the main ways to ensure the standardization process considers the needs and interests of SMEs is by appointing SME experts to relevant technical committees and working groups at European and international level. It is in this context that we are launching this call for experts. Currently, we have 65 experts working in more than 70 technical committees and 200 working groups. These include a wide range of sectors. So we find construction, consumer products, services, textile services, personal protective equipment, digital technologies, just to name a few examples. We also try to ensure that the standards developed are SME compatible by developing and promoting tools such as, for example, the Sense-Elec Guide 17 that provides guidance on how to write the standards, taking into account the needs of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and by participating, for example, in the SEN and SEN-Elec technical boards, which are the bodies that take decisions on issues such as, for example, the creation of new technical committees and oversee in general the technical work that are performed by these organizations. At policy level, we participate in the governing bodies of the European standards organizations, SEN, SEN-Elec, and ETSI, and we also follow up and comment on policies related to standardization to also ensure that from this perspective, SME interests are also considered. Moreover, SBS is also an observer on the Commission Committee on Standards, which basically allow us to comment on draft standardization requests given by the Commission to the European standards bodies for the development of standards in support of European policies and legislation. So this was a short introduction to SBS, which I think was important for you to understand a bit better the background for the launch of these calls. And now I would like to go more into detail regarding the call for experts for 2021. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the main ways for SBS to ensure that SME interests are considered in the development of standards is to appoint experts to technical committees, subcommittees, and working groups within SEN, SEN-Elec, ETSI, ISO, and IEC. The call is open to candidates with technical expertise in any standardization topic relevant to SMEs. This means that there is not a specific list of sectors for which you can apply, but that you are free to propose a specific technical committee or group for which you would like to be appointed. Applications of experts in the areas of sustainability, digital and new technologies or services are encouraged, but as I said, any area you propose will be considered. I would like to highlight, though, that you will need to provide a justification of why that specific area, committee, working group is relevant for SMEs. The call to help you to do the selection of committees and working groups includes at the end a series of links, is more specifically in page 6, a series of links to the pages of the different standards bodies, the web pages, where you can find a list of existing technical committees, subcommittees, and working groups. Another point that is important to mention is that SBS is to a great extent funded by the European Commission and EFTA. This means that the final appointment of experts is dependent on the approval of the 2021 work programme and budget by the European Commission and EFTA, as well as the governing bodies of SBS, the Board and the General Assembly. The appointment of experts is for 2021. So this means between January and December of next year. And this appointment is renewable. So if you were an expert, for example, last year in 2020, you can apply this year in order to be reappointed. And for example, if you apply this year, you can as well apply, for example, next year to be reappointed as well. Then important to highlight that the deadline for applications is 15th of September. So you still have some time to prepare your applications. And the text of the calls is available in the link that you can see on the bottom of your screens that is in the website of SBS. So what are the main expectations and tasks you would have to carry out if you are appointed as an SBS expert? The first point to be highlighted is that SBS experts are appointed to represent the European SME position. So this means that in their comments, in their work in technical committees and working groups, they need to convey the common European SME position and not the position of a specific organization, company, or country. This is an important point that needs to be stressed. Experts are expected to travel and attend the meetings of the committees, subcommittee, or working group for which they are appointed. We all know that the current situation is a bit exceptional and many meetings are at the moment being organized online, but I guess this situation will sooner or later come back to normal and experts should be able to attend physical meetings. Experts are also expected, of course, to actively contribute to the work of the technical committee and to analyze and submit technical comments and proposals in line, as I said before, with the European SME interests and needs. Of course, there is also some reporting involved, and experts are expected to report to the SBS Secretariat. Each appointed expert will be allocated what we call an expert coordinator from the SBS staff. And the expert coordinator will basically be the expert's main contact person and provide the expert with advice and help when needed. And the experts from their side are expected to report back on their activities. So more concretely, at the beginning of the year, the experts will need to develop what we call an action plan that gives an overview of the main work and objectives for 2021. And afterwards, 2 activity reports, one towards the middle of the year and another one at the end of the year, giving updates on the main developments and outlining issues that need to be addressed. Experts will also be expected to participate in relevant SBS working groups so that they can exchange with SBS member organizations and other experts. And the aim of their participation in these groups would be to, as I said earlier, to try to agree on an European SME position. For example, construction experts will be expected to participate in SBS, in the SBS working group dealing with construction matters, also, for example, with the construction products regulation. Whenever possible, these meetings will be organized virtually. SBS also organizes twice per year expert meetings, and in these meetings, experts receive updates from SBS and the different standards organizations regarding procedures and other relevant issues affecting their work, as well as also relevant policy updates from the European Commission. SBS covers the travel cost of experts up to a certain amount in order to participate in these meetings, and experts are expected to participate in at least one of the 2 meetings. And finally, experts might also be requested to contribute to the SBS newsletter or to contribute to other SBS activities. For example, if we organize an event, they might be requested to participate, for example, in a panel or as a speaker in one of these events. And I will now give the floor to Alain, who will continue with further details on the eligibility and selection criteria and also other aspects of the call.
Okay, good day everyone. So I'm going to give an overview of the eligibility and the selection criteria, and I will go also in depth in the application forms. So eligibility criteria, you have first you have to reside in the EU or in the EFTA countries. Your application has to be backed by a recognized SME association. That means that there is an association, an SME association that has to support you. If you don't know any association, there are many associations in many domains on the market, and you should find one and try to get their support for your application. There will be also an agreement to co-fund a part of the lump sum paid to the expert for his work during the year. I'm going to go back on these elements later on in the application form. Several points indeed will be reviewed more in depth in the application forms. You have also to guarantee an absence of double funding and conflict of interest. Again, we will see that in the application form. And yes, indeed, any current mandate, you cannot have a mandate today that is not compatible with SBS work. What does that mean? Actually, some of you, some mandates are not compatible with the SBS work. Why? Just an example. Some of you could be already involved in the standardization system and be, for example, head of a national delegation in the SEN system or ISO system. That is not compatible with SBS because actually the national interests that are defended by the expert could be different than the interest of the SMEs. So the expert could support views that are not compatible with the SMEs or against the SMEs interest. So we don't accept this kind of mandate. Next slide, please. Maitan, next slide, please.
Yes, it's on the screen.
Okay, sorry. So you have also to prove an SME or a craft-oriented background. You should have also technical expertise in the domain of the TC, the subcommittee. TC stands for Technical Committee, SC for Subcommittee, and WEG for Working Groups. Let's call them TB, Technical Bodies, is easier. So you have also to have an excellent knowledge of English, written and verbal. You have to know also the standardization system. But again, I will come back to this point in the application form. Don't worry. You have also to have good communication, negotiation skills, and computer literacy. Now, for the reapplying expert, the selection criteria are a bit different because we know them and they are already working. So they will be judged on the quality of the work that they've done this year in 2020, the timely delivery of their report, and also their participation, organization of their mirror committees. These mirror committees are now becoming SBS working group for next year. Next slide, please. The application should include at least one working group or a TC if there is no working group in the TC. Why? The working group is the real place where the work is done. The standards are developed in the working groups, and the TC are, let's say, more political. It's a place where decisions are taken. So the basic requirement is for the expert is to be part of one working group. That's basic. You can add other ones, but basically you must apply for at least one working group. We could have one SBS expert per working group. But if the TC has several working groups, we could have one expert per working group. But I will come back later in the application form too. Don't forget also to indicate a second choice for your application. Why? Because actually the technical body that you apply for might be already allocated to another expert. So then we can make a selection on another technical body. Next slide, please. That's now the main part, the content of the application. Next slide, please. Sorry. Actually, there are two application forms, and these application forms are annexed to the call on the web page of SBS. And there are two annexes. One is a form for new expert, and the other one is a form for reapplying expert. So in the application itself, the first section is dedicated to the data of the candidate. So you just simply fill your data. It's especially to get in touch with you for any relevant correspondence, or actually to provide you with the result of the selection. Then B, that's important. You have to indicate here the number, the reference of the technical committee, subcommittee, or working groups that you are applying for. So as already said, you have to apply at minimum to one working group. Different experts could be appointed for different working group in the same TC. For example, if I take the CEN-TC 248, it's called Textile and Textile Product, there are several working groups. There are 31 different working groups in that TC. So we could have, in principle, 31 different SBS experts dealing in each of the working group. But that's irrealistic. We have currently, I think, 4 or 5 of experts working in these working groups. And then, last thing, you have to indicate for each technical body you apply for, you have to indicate if you want to be paid or not. Actually, the expert could be paid for one technical body. So you have a contract, a paid contract for one technical body, and then you can also have contract for, but unpaid contract for the others technical body that you applied for. So if you apply for 3 technical bodies, you would have 1 paid contract and 2 unpaid contracts. Then you have to provide us with the indicative list of the meetings of the technical bodies you are applying for. So that's simply the indicative, so the meetings for next year in 2021. Then you have to explain your motivation to represent SMEs in the standardization system. So that's your personal view, why SMEs should be defended in the system. And then you have also to indicate, sorry, the importance of the particular TC that you have chosen from an SME perspective. So why this particular TC is important for the SME that you have to develop to in this section. Next section is actually simply the data of the supporting organization that is supporting you. You just simply give the data of this organization. Now the skills that you need to become an expert. You have first to have knowledge, technical expertise and experience in the domain of the body you are applying for. That's obvious. Simply describe what your skills are here and your experience. The knowledge of the standardization system. Actually, you have to know, have a general knowledge of the standardization system, but you should know more in detail the standardization organization, the process of the standardization organization for which you are applying. Example, if you apply for this TSEN TC248, you have to know how SEN works. If you apply for an ISO TC, you have to know how ISO works. Knowledge of English, you have actually to be able to understand what is said during the discussion in the TC. You have really to follow the discussion, to intervene, but so you have to have a good knowledge of English, and also you have to be able to write good report in English, because we have seen in the past we had sometimes some difficulties with that. You have also to have a good communication and negotiation skills. And again, if during the work, during the standard development, you have to develop and to present the SMEs views, you have to defend them, and sometimes you have to negotiate with the other members of the working group in order to get what you want, or at least a part. Computer literacy is just normal nowadays. Then how is providing the co-funding? So actually there are two main solutions. Either you provide the co-funding yourself, but I will again explain that a little bit later, or this co-funding will be provided either by the supporting organization that supports you, or your employer, or your own company. So you indicate here the data of the organization as long as they are different of section E. Then if you are selected, yes, actually if you have to indicate what type of contract you want to have. Either it will be a contract directly with you as an independent expert, or it will be a contract with the organization supporting you, or again your employer or your own company. Just put the data here, if different of section E. Then now the signed declaration of honor. We've put here a series of usual legal clauses for contracts that are in many contracts, but we have put specific ones for us. I mean, in section F, for example, you have you cannot receive funding for the work that you are applying for in SBS. So if you receive already work for this TC248, then you cannot apply here, at least for a paid contract. And you have also to ensure that they have no conflict of interest with the work of SBS. So that's it. Oula, time is flying. So you have simply to sign the document, and don't forget to attach the letter of support of the organization and also your CV. For the reapplying expert, yes, okay, good. The reapplying expert has to use the other application form. It is similar to the one of the new applicants, but there is no need to provide details on the skills that the expert has, because we know them, he's already working for us. Don't forget to attach the supporting letter of the organization, because actually these letters are valid 1 year, so you need each time you reapply, each time you have to provide us with this letter. And yes, the CV is optional, except if you want to submit an updated CV. Unfunded expert. The duties of the unfunded expert are exactly the same as the one from paid expert, in terms of the task, in terms of working plan, in terms of reports. And also the requirement remain the same. You have to, the quality of an unpaid expert must be the same as the one of a paid expert. No difference in terms of quality. There is only a difference in terms of payment. Contract and co-funding. Next slide, please. So the contract are the contract for 1 year only, from January to December 2021. We know that they are unfunded contracts. No, the lump sum given to the expert at European level to work in a European technical bodies is 10,000 euro, and the lump sum given to the expert to work at international level is 90,000 euro. It is to be noted that all expense and travel costs that the experts bear during the year are covered by the lump sum. That it means that you get the lump sum and all the costs that you have during the year are part of the lump sum you receive. Is the reason why actually the lump sum for international is different from European, because you have to travel worldwide and the travel costs are different to travel in the US or in Australia. Expert can also receive only one lump sum. So it was what I said earlier. You get paid for one contract only, and the other contract are unpaid. Next page, please. Yes, the contract actually is conditional to the co-funding. There is a prepayment to be done, and at European level is 1,331 euros, and at international level is 2,529 euro. So the prepayment has to be made before the contract is issued. It's a bit administrative, but don't worry, it's not that difficult. The contract, again, the contract will be either concluded between SBS and the supporting organization, the employer, or your own organization, or it will be between SBS and directly with you as an independent expert. Don't forget indeed to mention in the application what type of contract you are seeking for. Submission of the application, so that the deadline is 15th of September, midnight, Central European Time. The application must be sent to this email address, president@sbs-sme.eu. That's also important. All documents must be submitted in English. We don't accept supporting letter in German or in Italian. So please, all the documents in English. Also important, incomplete or unclear application will not be considered. We receive quite a lot of incomplete application, and so we will not take this application into consideration. And all applicants will be contacted after the selection to tell him the result of the selection. So if in the future we will have question, don't hesitate to send us an email or to drop us a call. But now I'm going to pass again the floor to Maitan for the question that you have probably raised during the presentation. Maitan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alain. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you have the possibility to ask questions by using the question panel that you can see on your screens. For the moment, we have 2 questions, but you are still on time to write the question if you have, any doubts or points you would like to clarify of what you heard so far. So the first question we have is from Tanya. and concerns the SBS working groups. She's asking how often SBS working groups gather to discuss together. So as you might remember, I mentioned that part of the tasks and the expectations of the expert is precisely to be part of these working groups. I would say that this might depend a bit, but I would, let's say, consider 4 maximum meetings per year, I would say. As I said, normally we will try to do these meetings virtually, and of course there might be exchange of emails in between, but I would say 3-4 per year maximum, more or less, is what I would consider. We also have another question from Paolo, who is asking when the results from the call would be available. So basically, as we said before, the deadline for the call is the 15th of September. We have foreseen that the evaluation committee will meet beginning of October, and after that the General Assembly Board of SBS has to endorse the evaluation, the outcomes of the evaluation. So I would say end of November, beginning of December at the latest, you will be informed of whether your application has been accepted or not. Okay, we have also a couple more questions. I'm going to give you this one, Alain. I wanted to pass it to you, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to work now. We have a question from Arjan asking what is the difference between European technical bodies and international technical bodies? You want to answer this one, Alain? Otherwise, I will answer.
Yes. No, it's okay. No problem. Actually, there is not much difference, and it's more that the technical committees, the member of the technical committees in Europe are European, and the member of the international committees are worldwide, Europe plus the US plus Japan plus Australia. So it's the members are coming from all the countries. The difference is there, but regarding the way how the work is carried out is almost the same. Almost the same.
Just maybe to add, Alain, because I guess maybe the question had to do also with the lump sum, etc. So the European technical bodies are basically committees that are at CEN, CENELEC, or ETSI level. So the European organizations that develop European standards. The international technical bodies are basically technical committees from ISO and IEC. So indeed, as Alain said, they don't develop, what they develop is international standards. So you also have participants from everybody around the world, Japan, US, etc. Okay. There is another question about if there is a list of support associations or if there are some criteria for these organizations. So indeed, one of the criteria is that and requirements in order to apply is that you have a support letter from an SME organization. So I mean, what we look at, I mean, we don't have a specific list. As an indication, you can, for example, look at the members of SME United, which is a European association representing SMEs, at the members of SBS. But this is not, the requirement is not that the support letter has to be from one of these associations. This gives you an indication or existing recognized associations that are representing SMEs. it gives you an indication. But in the past, for example, also this year, we also have experts that are coming with a support letter from other organizations that are not members of SBS or SME United. What we will be looking at is that it's really a representative SME organization, either national or European. So if you want to have an indication, as I said, you can look at SME United SBS members, but this does not exclude other organizations, but we will indeed be checking that indeed is an organization that is representing mainly SMEs. I hope this answers the question. Let's see. I'm reading. I think I see you are getting quite. It's good that you have questions. So we have another question from Michael. That a constraint is set to only have one expert per working group. Will an application for a non-funded expert have higher score in the evaluation and selection by SBS than an application for a non-funded expert? No. The score doesn't have to do with whether you are funded or unfunded. When you look at the eligibility criteria, this is not a criteria to see whether you are selected or not. We are looking at your SME background. I would say that is very important for us. As I explained, SBS is there to represent the interest of SMEs in standardization. So that is very important for us, that you have an SME background, the technical knowledge on standardization, etc. So whether you are applying for a funded or unfunded expert doesn't mean that you are going to get a higher score. So just to clarify that point. There is actually a question linked to that from Alessandro, which says, could you please clarify how does it work for unfunded experts? Why should we prefer this option? Well, I would say that first of all, we have a restricted budget that has to be approved by EFTA and the European Commission. So we cannot fund an unlimited number of experts. So I guess the question is why you should actually participate as an unfunded expert then. I think what is important to point out is that by participating as an SBS expert, you are also contributing and you also have some advantages. As SBS, we also have a privilege, let's say, position within, for example, Senelec, which means that we can also raise issues at technical board level. We are at the technical board of the European standardization organizations. And I think by becoming an SBS expert, even if you are unfunded, you are sure that you also have the SBS secretariat behind you that can help you when you have difficulties, for example, to defend the interest of SMEs. It's part of what we do, trying to solve issues when you are an SBS expert and, for example, SMEs are not heard in the committee. So I think the added value of even being an SBS expert if you are unfunded is the support you get from SBS and the fact that you will also have access to other level of also at technical board level, etc. So if there is an issue, we can also escalate it if needed.
Maitan, may I add also something on this point?
Sure.
Actually, you might also have, for example, TC who are complementary. So the work is, let's say, complementary. So you can follow one and you want to follow the second one, but you cannot have two paid contracts. So you will have one paid contract and one unpaid contract. And also some experts would like to participate in the work, but they are not allowed because you have to know that actually the membership of a TC is actually their national delegations. It's based of the Senelec members. Is not especially a simple, let's say, actor who can apply direct or can speak or attend directly in this TC. You have to have a kind of way to enter the committee, and SBS is one of this way. You can enter as a liaison in the TC and follow the work, and also intervene and provide comment and so forth. So that's a reason why some of the experts ask for unfunded contract. Sorry.
Thank you, Alain. I think it was an important point you made as well. And we have a final question, and I think, we are a bit over the time, but since we only have a question left, maybe we can answer this question and then close the webinar. So the question is, do you have a number of experts you are looking for, or it depends on the work? I would say that it also depends on the budget available. So every year, more or less, you can correct me, Alain, I think we have around 60 experts funded. Of course, the amount depends on whether we have more international, more European, but I would say that normally we found around 60 experts per year. I guess, Alain, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Not really added, but 60, 65, 68, depending the year. And as you said, it depends actually of the balance between the European and the international, because when we give a contract to one international, it represents actually two European. So if we have more European, then we can have more contracts. If we have more international ones, then we have less contract. That's
So yeah, around 60 more or less per year, let's say, a bit more, depending.
Yes.
So I hope you found the webinar useful, and I just wanted to thank you for your participation and encourage you again to send your applications. And I'll just to point out again, the deadline is the 15th of September. So thank you for your participation. And as I said, we will put this webinar and the slides in the SBS website. And don't hesitate to contact us if you have any other questions. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.